district leaders and candidates. And if you want a copy, leave a note at the sign-in desk, contact me, or better yet, contact your municipal chair and get to know your Democratic chairs. Okay, so this is actually sponsored by the Westchester Young Democrats. Harry Vicker is the president. And by Emiliana Ulai, who is one of our county legislators representing. No, not anymore. Okay. Formerly our Peekskill. So, but I want to thank everybody for doing taking their civic responsibility so seriously. As we've seen by recent current events, who we have in the United States Congress is key. And so we want to make sure that here in CD 17, we elect a person who will properly represent the voters. All residents of CD 17. So with that, let me give the mic back to Emiliana.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I'm so honored to be here with you all tonight. My name is Emiliana Ulai, and I serve as the Westchester County Legislator. Welcome to my district. Welcome to beautiful Croton. The honor of being the #1 most sustainable community in New York State, our little village. We have our mayor, Brian Pugh, here with us. Also joining us here is our Assembly Member, Dana Levenberg. Deputy Mayor Len Simon. Trustee Nora Nicholson. Former Assemblywoman Sandy Gala. And former Croton Trustee Sherry Horowitz. Candidates in the room too, Darren Rigger, Peekskill Council Member. Karen Pecora, former president of CSEA Local in the region, running for Croton Trustee as well. Some more labor friends in the room, Lou Sanchez from Local 3. And our great ally, Joe Mayhew from CWA. So in addition to serving as a Westchester County Legislator in my private capacity, I work for the New York State United Teachers Union, the largest union in the state. See firsthand what a union job can do for a family, and so that's why we're here tonight. We're here to see where these candidates stand. Which side are you on? And with that, I'll kick it to Harry Baker.
All right, I guess I will get into the format now. Each candidate is going to have 90 seconds to introduce themselves. We're going to ask a series of questions switching from labor issues and youth issues. And each candidate will have 60 seconds to respond to each question. We'll alternate. Emiliana will ask the labor-related questions, and I will, of course, focus on the youth-related questions. And then we'll have 90 seconds to provide closing remarks.
One note on that, Harry.
Yeah.
We have a timekeeper who's sitting in the front row. Her name is Julia. Julia, please stand up. 10 seconds left, and a red sign when your time is up.
All right. You take the first question, or?
We can start from this side of the table.
Oh, sorry, introductions first.
Yes.
I literally just said it, yeah.
John Sullivan, 90 seconds to, oh, forgive me, yes, thank you so much. We're going to start, of course, with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I've got one on my phone here. flag, flag, flag.
I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, John, and with that, now it's your turn.
Well, hello, everyone, and hello, timekeeper. I know you are the most important person in the room, most on time and on schedule. I'm so happy to see all of you here tonight. If I didn't know better, I would say this is the only building in Westchester with working air conditioning, but I'm so glad to see that you're so interested in hearing all of us talk tonight. My name is John Sullivan, and I jumped into this race after serving almost 17 years in the FBI because I saw up close between the Trump administration as well as the Democratic administrations that I worked for, what it's like when government actually works for the people. And then under the last few months of the Trump administration, before I resigned my post, I actually saw what could happen when things go wrong. And I think we're seeing it all now play out in our news feeds and our current events and our Twitter feeds. But I think what's really important too is that I come from this from a different perspective as well, because I'm also a dad of a 6-year-old and really care about the future of this country. I'm married to my husband. We've been together for more than 20 years. And I think that our democracy is really at stake. We talked about it a lot in 2024, but I think now it's actually true. We're seeing the norms and the procedures and the processes all just fall apart under Donald Trump and under Mike Lawler. He is co-signing this MAGA agenda while he pretends to masquerade as this moderate for all of us. And we need someone in this role, in this position, to stop and hold him accountable. I will just say really quickly, I know time is tight, but I'm the proud product of 2 CWA union members for over 40 years. And so I'm really happy to be here tonight. It's a full circle moment for me because I used to be the intern for the College Democrats of America. So to see so many of our youth so interested and involved tonight is really great. So thank you so much, and I'm sorry.
Hi everyone, I'm Mike Sachs. I'm a dad of 2 boys here in Croton. I'm a union member of SAG-AFTRA. And I'm in this race to fight for my kids' future, all our kids' future, our district, our democracy, and for everything that Mike Lawler and his fellow MAGA extremists have abandoned. But I mean, that's true for a lot of us on this stage. I bring to this campaign a unique perspective of this dangerous moment we're now in. I had a front row seat, sometimes quite literally, to how we got here. I'm not a politician, I'm a lawyer, I'm a journalist. I covered the Supreme Court, covered Congress, covered the 2016 campaign, the first Trump administration. So really, from Citizens United to January 6th. So I have a unique perspective, a line of sight that what got us to this moment is that for too long we have failed to recognize that our policies have been oriented towards billionaires, towards elites, towards special interests, leaving the rest of us, we the people and working people, behind. But right now, people are showing up, standing up. You guys are here. No King's protests. Streets of Los Angeles. Town halls. And this campaign is a movement to meet our moment. Yes, we have to beat Lawler. Of course we have to beat Lawler. But that's not all. We need to send the message that we have to fundamentally reorient our politics and our policies back to the people and return the House of Representatives to the people's house. So I look forward to answering the questions and hear what you guys have to say. Thanks for being here.
Look at that collaboration.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Reinman. I live in Chappaqua. I've been there for the last 19 years with my husband and my 2 children. 10 years ago, I was driving in Mount Kisco and I saw families walking to the bus stop without coats. And I was absolutely horrified. And that day, I started 911 cares. 914 Cares is a nonprofit organization that provides basic essentials to families in need in every single community in Westchester County. We don't work directly with the public, so for the last 10 years, I have been working in every community with the school districts and the healthcare centers and the daycare centers and the nonprofit organizations. I have learned what working families need. I have learned where our system and our government is failing them. And I have worked hard to produce programs that help them get over the hump, that help them take the next step in their lives. The day after the 2024 election, it hit me quite drastically that this administration, the Trump-Lawler administration, was going to dismantle the safety nets that all of the families I have worked for the past 10 years had relied on. It struck me that I had a unique perspective that I could actually take to Washington, D.C., that I could take my mission to help families in need in Westchester and move it into a bigger arena. It would be my pleasure to serve all of you in Congress, all of our working families, and all of our constituents.
My name is Becky Phillips Daly. Thank you so much for having me. I come to you today as a candidate for New York's 17th because I have dedicated my entire life to service, and I see this as an extension. When I talk about the service that I've committed to in my life, it's been as a nonprofit executive with over 30 years of experience advancing social justice and equity for diverse communities, and it's also been as a trustee in the village of Tarrytown, where I work really hard to advance the same values. My commitment to service came from my family. My mother, an immigrant from El Salvador, taught children in English language learners in public schools and was a member of her union. My father, a veteran of 2 foreign wars, worked for the U.S. Mint as a pressman, and he was also a member of his federal union. My husband, a journalist, member of the News Guild. My sister, a nurse, a member of her union as well. And I was a member of POSTA, Local 2110, when I was an educator at the Museum of Modern Art. So I don't need to tell anyone here, in this room especially, that we are in the front line of America's future right here in CD17. And the rights of workers to organize for justice, not to mention the federal departments that were created are under attack right now. So my life is what it is because of unions. I'm running because of that, and I'm excited to fight with unions to change the direction of our future for the better.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Beth Davidson. I'm a proud former Young Dem, a mom to 2 future Young Dems, and a union-endorsed Rockland County legislator. Really excited to be here with you all tonight. For the last 20 years, I've been organizing this community, freezing my fingers off, petitioning in February, knocking tens of thousands of doors, and mobilizing hundreds of volunteers to fight and win local races. And I'm the only candidate on this stage who has actually beaten Republicans in tough districts. I did that not only when I won my own Purple County legislative seat, but when I led a slate of candidates to deliver the first Democratic supermajority in Rockland County history. Right? Let's be real. The National Democrats and political insiders in DC have lost the plot. Where's the fight? Where's the fire? Where's the moral clarity? They have forgotten that we are the party of the working people, not of the corporate special interests. They've taken young voters, so many of you here, for granted, instead of treating you like the force you are, and they've forgotten how to win. I'm not here to run the same old DC playbook. I'm here to run my Hudson Valley playbook, the one that actually wins tough races. That's why I've already raised $500,000 in just 6 weeks, earned 150 endorsements from every corner of this district, and how we're going to flip this seat red to blue and send Mike Lawler packing for good. Thank you all very much.
Hi there, I'm Kate Conley, a very proud 4th generation Hudson Valley born and raised patriot. My mom grew up down the road in Peekskill, my dad, Hopewell Junction. I come from a working class family where these values of pride, service, commitment, courage are things we had from the very beginning. And that's why when 9/11 happened and I was a junior in high school here in the Hudson Valley, I knew my calling was to step up and fight. It was to go to war for this country, to defend our values, to defend the American people. Because I believe in this country and what we are. And that's why I'm doing this today. After 16 years in uniform, and 6 tours overseas, to combat zones like Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen, I put it all on the line because I believe in this nation. And I firmly believe that our best days are still ahead of us. But we have to put in the hard work to make that true. And that's not happening right now. What we are seeing is that politicians who got us into this mess are not going to be the ones who get us out of it. We need difference. Same people, same playbook, same results. It's time for change. We deserve it. Our families deserve it. The future requires it. And that's why I'm about making sure America is working for working class families. And that means sending people like Mike Lawler, the #1 swamp creature I know, who is all about political expediency and sacrificing everyone and anyone to advance himself. We deserve better. We will get better, but we got to do it together. So thank you.
Good evening, Croton. I am Peter Chatsky. I am a fighter. I've been a fighter my entire life. I am a lifelong Westchester resident, I'm a lifelong Democrat. I started a small business when I was in my 20s, providing software for the largest banks in the world. On a regular basis, I negotiate contracts, and even though I'm in no position to win against JP Morgan, Citibank, Goldman Sachs, I've always done the best I could, and I've always come out on top. I'm probably the only candidate here who has actually fought with Donald Trump, and I have won. Not just once, 4 separate times. My involvement getting into politics was appearing in front of the planning board as a Briarcliff resident, fighting against the golf course that Donald Trump was proposing for the village of Briarcliff map. I stood there listening to Mr. Trump say it's the only solution, the only layout, it would change the village, would make us the envy of all other communities. I disagreed. My neighbors disagreed. We banded together. I formed a coalition. We hired landscape architects. We hired land use council. We presented an alternative plan to that planning board and made Donald Trump explain why our plan was not as good as his plan. We won that battle. The course that's there today looks a lot more like the course I designed than the course he designed. I became mayor because of that adventure. He came to me, he wanted tournaments in Briarcliff. I said no, I won that battle. I came back into politics after disagreeing with a settlement the village made with Donald Trump. I was reelected. I will continue to fight for Donald Trump. Been elected 5 times. I'm looking forward to doing this again and standing up for all the residents of CD 17.
We're gonna get into the first question on the youth-related issues portion. Housing costs are the biggest issue for workers and youth across Westchester County. Half of all renters here are rent burdened, spending 30% more of their gross income on rent, and further adding to the burden, Westchester's median home sale price hit $1 million this past year, putting homeownership increasingly out of reach for youth and working families. In states like New York, local governments wield significant power over housing development due to robust home rule provisions. How can the federal government effectively partner with or incentivize local municipalities to address the rising housing costs faced by youth and workers? We'll start on this side.
Sure. Housing affordability is something I've specifically tackled in Briarcliff Manor. You have to recognize that it's not just housing costs, it's utility costs, it is property tax, it's insurance, it's transportation. In Briarcliff, we looked at diversity of housing. We thought that was the #1 issue driving affordability issues for younger first-time home buyers, as well as for older, long-time residents who wanted to age in place. By changing our laws and mandating in multi-tenant properties, in large parcels, that we need a diversity of housing, including studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms. We provide a lot more opportunity for different types of people to enter our system. We have fought against rising Con Ed prices. We are one of the few municipalities who's actually sued Con Edison several times. We battle with them all the time over pricing. We battle with them over deferred maintenance, which when they don't do, costs all taxpayers a lot more money. As part of my federal movement, I would push to have utilities doing regular, ongoing maintenance, keeping the price of new infrastructure affordable for everybody. And that helps young people, older people, everybody. Also,
Teamwork, dreamwork, I'm ready for you. Here. So one of the saddest things I think I've heard most consistently as I travel to every corner of this district is the story of parents and grandparents talking about how their kids or grandkids want to start a family, want to start that chapter of their life, and they can't afford to do that. And I think that is fundamentally wrong. America should never be the place where economic conditions are keeping families apart. And shame on us for letting that happen. And so I'm going to tell you what I think Congress can do, because that's the job of interviewing with you all. I think there's 2 major things that Congress should tackle to address this problem. The first, we need to make building houses easier. And the second, we've got to make it more affordable to buy the houses that are built. When you talk about the first one, making building houses easier, we have federal regulations that are over half a century old that were dealing with the wrong times and haven't kept pace with advancement. We need to make sure Congress is doing its job at relooking those, reforming those, and making sure it's not, the federal government isn't stopping local communities from building in their communities. And I've got the red card, which I'm going to honor. And I'll just say the second thing is, economically, we need to have the stability to make sure the federal government's not pursuing policies that are reckless, like universal tariffs, that are going to drive up things like mortgage interest rates, making it unaffordable, or downgrading American credit ratings, again, making it more unaffordable. We've got to set responsible economic conditions to allow Americans the opportunity to actually buy the homes that are built. And shame on us if we're not.
So, like many issues that we're going to be discussing tonight, I don't have to tell you what I will do when I'm in Congress. I can tell you what I'm doing right now. So, thanks to a Democratic supermajority and 4 new representatives on the legislature, we have our first ever housing committee on the Rockland County Legislature. Rockland County is 4,200 units short of housing, and Westchester County is 11,000 units short. We've got a housing task force on which I serve to educate people in the community across the county why we need new housing to help our communities thrive. We have also just held a huge housing forum, the 3rd annual, sold out in Rockland County, to talk about all the projects that we have coming online and to again educate the public. But at the end of the day, I knocked 4,000 doors and heard so many gut-wrenching stories of rentals that were out of control. We have to stop the price gouging and the private equity firms that are buying up our housing, our rental stock, and driving up prices for young people. And I think that was supposed to be the right answer.
Trustee and Chair to tell me county decision continually is a key aspect of what run on, which is making government, making housing more affordable. And so I'll speak from the position as a trustee. What we need from our Congress, from members of Congress, is support and money, to be plain. We need money to upgrade infrastructure because we can't expand our housing unless we have electricity grid, unless all the utilities, unless we can upgrade our, sorry, drawing a blank, but sort of blank, giving pipelines to prevent flooding. All of these things need to be upgraded. It is impossible to lay on significant new housing unless we are prepared for the climate change that's coming our way, and we are not sufficiently prepared for the kind of flooding that we anticipate will come. And so fundamentally, we need infrastructure funds from the federal government for this.
Affordability is the biggest issue facing New York 17, and affordability starts with housing. As somebody who's worked in every community in Westchester, I've heard over and over again that the cost of rent and the cost of first-time home ownership is nearly strangling all of the people in our community. So what can we do about that in Congress? Well, what we can do about that in Congress is work with HUD to make sure that we bring more money back to this district, that HUD provides more first-time home buyer loans, that HUD provides strategic community housing, and that we work with HUD to bring more affordable housing to this district. Listen, when you are paying over $2,000 a month in rent and you are a young person or a young family, you can't save for a down payment. We need our federal government to come in and help our young people so that they don't have to put down $800,000 down payment. That is the responsibility of the government, and we need to take it seriously.
Yes, and to everything you just heard. So I'm sitting here, my heart's beating, I'm agitated, because all of the proposals, all of the ideas that I'm hearing down the line are correct. And here in Croton, we're doing some really wonderful building in this town to make sure this town is more affordable as well. But we can only talk about what we'll do so much without realizing how deeply messed up our system, our federal system is right now. We can talk about delivering dollars from Washington. We can talk about working with HUD. We can talk about lowering inflation with good legislation. But as long as there is, and we can win the House, as long as there's a Senate in which a minority of a minority can block good things from happening and want to hurt people and harm the economy. And if you get through there, so long as there is a president who looks to harm people, but you get through there, and there's a Supreme Court lying in wait to say, no, you cannot do that because we serve not the people, but those who bought our positions. So I see this not just as championing what everyone's saying, but using the House as a platform, a place where we can get down there, someone from this district, and champion what can be when we're all in it together, when we break those systems, and create that vision from the House that will emanate outwards for several election cycles to come, so we can get to the point where what we're saying is actually able to happen.
Is ditto a good answer? So I would say that there's a few bills that are moving through Congress or sitting in Congress right now that are bipartisan. One deals with encouraging local communities to look at reforming their zoning laws, others bringing down the cost of prices for materials. But I also think it's important that before we get too far into it, we need to understand that we have to make the bad problem not get worse. And by that I mean the Trump-Lawler tariffs. The Homeowner Builders Association, hardly a liberal group, actually put out a survey, and 60% of the respondents said they're seeing the price of materials actually going up. It's going to add on average about $9,200 to the price of a new cost for a home. And so Mike Lawler talked a lot about intervening in April. He said if the tariffs keep going on, Congress will intervene. And here we are in June. So I think we're all here tonight to say that it's time for the intervention. We're going to intervene, and we're going to end his tenure in Congress. We're going to bring some responsibility and accountability back to the work that is done there in Washington.
Thank you so much. I want to clarify that we shared all of the questions in advance with all of the candidates, so they had a chance to prepare. So the next question is a labor-related question. The National Labor Relations Act and the National Labor Relations Board are foundational to protecting workers' rights to organize, bargain collectively, and engage in concerted activities in the private sector. Labor unions are seeing a 60-year high of public support, with Gallup reporting that 70% of Americans, 70%, have a favorable view of labor unions. Even with this widespread support, we've seen persistent efforts from the Trump administration to weaken the NLRB's enforcement powers and even proposals to undermine the NLRA itself. Which side are you on now? Have you ever supported workers on a picket line? Which unions were you joining or have you had good relationships with throughout your career? And what can we do to support and protect the NLRB and NLRA? John, first.
So one of the challenges of working in the FBI is there's a lot of restrictions on what you can do, and in the federal government, there actually isn't necessarily a union for every organization. We have associations, which are a little different, technicalities, can't strike, can't organize in a lot of ways. But as I mentioned in the opening, I'm the proud product of 2 CWA union members for over 40 years. I will say, I think that we need to look forward now in how we make it more possible for people to become part of a union and having that bargaining power. The PRO Act, I think, is one of the perfect examples of what we can be supporting and what I've been making key priority when I was elected to Congress. Mike Lawler hasn't done that. He has not made that PRO Act something he was willing to co-sponsor. And I think we need to think about it from the perspective of bargaining, right? We need to make sure that employees have employers are being held accountable when they try to keep employees from organizing and having their voices heard. But I think that when you look at Trump's attacks right now, as it is on workers' ability to organize and some of his executive orders, it shows how threatened they are by the idea of unions, and it shows how important and impactful unions are. I wish I had a union. I know a lot of people in the federal government right now who are worried about losing their jobs or are losing their jobs. We wish they had a union.
We have the questions, so I'm gonna go through the questions. What side are you on? On the union side. Have you ever supported workers on the picket line? I am a member of SAG-AFTRA, and I had a project in the works 3 years ago that we had to grind to a halt on because of the SAG-AFTRA strikes. And I was very supportive of those strikes and put that work on ice because of that. Which unions were you in? Which unions did I join? And what can we do to support and protect the NLRB and NLRA? This is not just a Trump thing. This goes back to the right-wing movement, going back to when the NLRA was passed by the Roosevelt administration. Right now, we have an administration that's dedicated to rolling back not just the Great Society, but the New Deal. And this administration doesn't just come from Trump. They're in concert with every Republican in Congress, including Mike Lawler, and 6 justices of the US Supreme Court, which just acted to fully make the NLRB a tool of the administration. It was created by the New Deal to be independent. But yet now, every member of the NLRB will be a stooge of Donald Trump. This rot goes deep, and we can propose the PRO Act, and we will fight for the PRO Act. But don't fool yourself that there's going to be someone waiting at the end to say, sorry, that's unconstitutional. So we need to keep our eyes on how to fix this problem, and use the House, broken records, and use the House to understand that we have to effectuate that vision and bring the power back to the people, for those who take it and bought it from us. Thank you.
I fully support unions, collective bargaining, and workers' rights to unionize. I am the proud daughter of 2 New York City educators. One was in the UFT and one was in the CSA. And through those memberships, I was afforded amazing health care and stability in my home, knowing that my parents were not going to lose their jobs. And since I married my husband, we have been lucky enough for my mother-in-law is a recipient of UFT pension benefits, which keeps her financially stable and keeps her happy and healthy. So I want to be very clear that I support unions. I am adamantly opposed to Tier 6, and I will fight with the unions to make sure that we fix what's broken in Tier 6. And I am adamantly opposed to Trump's executive order, which limited public service student loan forgiveness, which is the reason why so many young people get involved in teaching, because they know that if they work 10 years, their student loans will be forgiven. And if we don't have that benefit, we will not have as many young people going into teaching. Thank you.
I too have always been on the side of unions, as I remember from my intro and my family history. And the first picket line I walked was in the early 90s with the United Farm Workers on the grape boycott that was happening at the time, and have been on, I suppose, many since then. In terms of the NLRB, NLRA, and even the Department of Labor, I mean, there's a clear reason they're under attack. I mean, the Department of Labor, I think, clawed back $273 billion in back wages. That is the degree of theft that can happen if we don't have these institutions in place protecting workers. And so, like the others have said here, the most important thing we can do is pass the PRO Act, which Mike Lawler Not only does he not support it, the reason he said he doesn't support it is because the PRO Act actually protects undocumented workers as well. But frankly, it's only just because it's not okay to steal from certain classes of people. If you're stealing someone's wages, then you should be able to fight for them. That's why we have to fight for the PRO Act.
As someone who was also the daughter of a proud union card-carrying public school teacher, I've always understood the importance of labor unions to workers' rights and to fair wages. I'm proud to say that I was with SEIU this morning in front of Nyack Hospital, protesting the Medicaid cuts, which are going to impact local hospitals, especially the two in Rockland County, and healthcare workers alike. I also stood out in front of Nyack Hospital with the nurses in New York nurses in December of 2023, where we successfully averted a strike, bringing everyone back to the negotiating table so that they could get a fair contract. In most of the summer of 2023, the UAW was out in front of one of our auto plants in Japan. So many times it was a 24/7 strike. My fellow legislative candidates and I were taking coffee, donuts, and moral support to those workers as well. I was one of only 2 Democrats in 2023 that was endorsed by the building trades. I went in there saying, I know you mostly endorse Republicans, you're making a mistake. I understand housing policy. I'm endorsed by the Sierra Club. We're gonna build the right kind of housing that is environmentally friendly. I stomped out. Half an hour later, they called and said they were endorsing me. They not endorsed my campaign, and they continue to advise me today. NLRB, we strengthen it by bringing more young people. We're already organizing at Starbucks and Trader Joe's around the country into the system so we can build from the ground up. Thank you.
I talked about my opening, how my working class family roots really shaped a lot of my values. And I have to tell you, one of the stories I remember from my mom growing up, an example of courage and standing up and fighting for those who need help. So when she was a clerk in the Postal Service, she's worked there now 47 years. She told the story of when she was the secretary for the executive board of the local chapter of the Postal Workers Union. They picketed outside of the post office in Hyde Park because that postmaster was abusive towards their employees. And there was a photo of my mom out there leading the charge. I couldn't have been more proud, but that was an example of courage and standing up and fighting for your neighbors and fighting for what's right. And again, that's why I went to West Point, that's why I joined the Army. So they don't let you unionize in the Army. They send you to the most dangerous places and you don't join the military for any money, so nobody pays there. But I will tell you, I fought so that every American could have fairness and equality and liberty and justice. And I will absolutely fight to make sure unions have that degree of support, that we support the NRLB and the NRLA, and I'm going to stop right there, but hell yes to unions and fighting for them, because they are the workers who build America, and they deserve our support and fierce support.
I believe protecting unions is a vital part of keeping American prosperity strong. I started a company, I was only 25 years old. I've never been part of a union myself, but I was married to a union member a while ago, meaning 2 of my 4 kids have a mother who is a union member. My other 2 children had a great-grandfather who was a union organizer for the furniture workers. So it is in my blood, even if it is 1 generation off. I have worked with unions in my role as both mayor and deputy mayor, worked with the CSEA, who represents our DPW department, and our local PBA representing our police department. I have often been the board member who has sided with the union and negotiating for their benefit, just because I believe it makes the village stronger to have an employment force that is well compensated and receives good benefits and doesn't have to worry about any healthcare concerns. Despite Trump, though, the future should be strong for unions. 88% of those under 30 approve of unions, and I think we're going to be in good shape.
We're on to youth issues question 2. The global climate crisis demands immediate and decisive action. We see the effects all around us, from wildfire devastation to the alarming regularity of what were once considered once-in-a-lifetime storms. Given that Mike Waller has voted in favor of a budget bill that proposes to repeal essential clean energy tax credits introduced by the Inflation Reduction Act, a move that will set back climate progress. We ask, what is your plan to address the climate emergency, and what specific steps will you commit to take to reduce emissions and build resilience against the worsening impacts of climate? Just so we're not starting with the same candidate every time, we're going to skip to Kate and then go that direction, and then we'll come back around to Peter.
So climate change, there's no debate. We see the increasing effects and devastation across this country, whether it's the expansion of Tornado Alley, whether it's more wildfires, whether it's harder and more severe hurricanes and tropical storms that are devastating communities. We have to get after this. And the reality is, this isn't just an environmental or community issue. This is also an economic issue, an economic opportunity. There is no reason why the United States cannot be the global leader in clean energy manufacturing. Why are we buying solar panels from China instead of the Hudson Valley? This is an opportunity for us to take back an economic sector that's been critical to American success and prosperity. And we should be welcoming this challenge. We should be investing in local programs like the sustainability track at BOCES. We should be encouraging the next generation to get into this space because it is essential. This is an opportunity if we look at it that way, and we need to seize it. And so yes, our future deserves better. We also need to be investing in current mitigation measures because there is more severe flooding. There are issues with drainage. The Hudson Valley is suffering when these storms come through, and they need better infrastructure to support those types of devastating effects that are not going away. And that's where the federal government and Congress has responsibility to step up and help.
So I started my day today with the members of my water task force. I serve as the chairwoman of the Rockland County Task Force on Water Resources Management. I also serve as the environmental chair. And I'm tasked with creating a 10-year water plan to make sure our county has sufficient water resources, looking at source water protection and conservation. And I'm a perfect foil to Mike Lawler, who, as we all know, clawed back $33 million in community funding with his budget vote earlier this year, including clean water projects in Pleasantville and in Carmel. I also actively, I can pass legislation in real time to counter what the federal government is doing. I'm supporting Pete Harcum's Plastics Packaging Reduction Act, and I made Rockland County, under my leadership, the first county in New York State to formally pass a resolution opposing Project Maple, a dirty natural gas pipeline running underneath the Hudson River, coming up through my county in Stony Point and dumping a dirty compressor in Ramapo. And I think 10 years ago, anyone would have said Rockland County would be the first one to do something environmental, but that's the power of our supermajority.
I think part of why I ran for local office was fundamentally sort of fear my children felt at the idea of climate change coming for us. And for me, that was about modeling for them that we actually can do things to mitigate this crisis, but it requires our federal government to be fully invested, which we understand right now that it's not. And the full investment needs to be any kind of funding that is put forward for infrastructure must require that the planning of that infrastructure take climate change into account. It absolutely must. We also cannot defund the research or the agencies like NOAA that tracks the data that we need to be able to build a program. We can't stand by on old historic data to tell us what the flood maps will be. We need to understand what solid projections are, and those have to be science-based. They need to come from our universities. They need to be properly funded so that we can prepare for the future. And as a congressperson, that is what I would for.
I want to be very clear. Clean air and clean water are basic human rights. And it is the responsibility of the federal, state, and local governments to make sure that we have those basic human rights. Under the Trump-Lawler administration, they have rolled back emission standards. They have increased drilling. They have decimated the EPA and FEMA. All of this needs to be fixed immediately before we see the impacts of these crises. We need to rejoin the Paris Accords immediately. We need to bring emissions back down to pre-Trump era legislation. We need to work with all major cities to make sure they are working on a green cityscape. We need to make sure, like Kate said, that we bring clean jobs into New York 17 and the United States. It is about time that our young people have jobs that are relevant to what is happening in our government. We also need to remember that just in this last budget bill, I won't call it what he calls it, in the last budget bill, he has put public lands on sale to corporations and the private sector. We need to save our public lands. Green space is imperative to the future of our country.
Yes, and I see a couple parents in this audience whose children are in the same grade classes. My children, we don't want our children growing up in some dystopian hellscape where climate is failing and we all not to fearmonger, but right now on the path we're on with this current administration and the party that's controlling government, they are too busy trying to make their friends richer to make our children healthier and have a world better place. So yes, and but how do we do that? Well, when Democrats take back the House and control the House, we're gonna have some oversight. We're gonna have some hearings. We're gonna bring in people who can speak firsthand to the damage that Mike Lawler, if he's watching, and his and the administration he so champions are wreaking onto American health. We're gonna put forward legislation because having a good president who puts forward different EPA regulations that will make clean power plants cleaner, will just get struck down by the Supreme Court. We're gonna lead on national legislation so that we don't have to rely on California to do so. Because again, California doing so, well, the Supreme Court just said, sorry, you can't. And they would have said that anyway, whether Biden or Trump was in power. So we need to address the structural issues of capture of our government and return the power to the people. We do so by putting on a show, legislative hearings, and promoting good laws that will show that people and our children can be healthy in a planet that lives as opposed to drowns.
So I made a joke at the beginning that we were all here for the air conditioning, but I'm not quite sure what other evidence Mike Lawler or Donald Trump need that climate change is real. We're sitting in a heat dome, I think, at the moment, and it's going to make people sick and have people die, and it's absolutely unexcusable that this is happening in America. But I also think that it's important to note that Mike Lawler, as everyone's talked about, has rescinded his support or done everything possible to hurt the climate initiatives that were put forth under the Biden administration. But we Democrats also don't do something great when it comes to these policies. It was inside the Inflation Reduction Act. We don't advertise the success of our policies. We don't tell people how they're working, and we're not telling everyone how it's doing amazing things for our communities and our kids when we put it inside of something called inflation reduction. And when inflation doesn't reduce as quickly as people thought, they assume everything in the bill's bad. So Mike goes through with a scalpel and says, I want to get rid of all of these things that are going to make the community in our country more prosperous, bring manufacturing and business to our communities. If any branded CEO can go around the world and talk to China and other places and say, I want to bring manufacturing back to my company, or I want to go and bring it back to my country. As your congressman, I'll be traveling around to every state in the country and saying, you've got a great battery factory. Let's put that in with our battery factories up north. You've got a great solar panel company. Let's see if we can partner and bring that back to the Hudson Valley and boost our economy. Because as your point of having kids and worrying about the future, we need to make sure that there are industries that they can go into, that they can prosper, because it's not going to be the industries of the past because of climate change. It's making it much harder.
It is brutal going last. Literally, everything I was gonna cover here has been mentioned except for one thing. So I'm gonna take this a little further. Trump and Lawler have been disastrous for climate. I don't think there's any question about that. But part of the culprit is that Donald Trump is completely ignoring congressional laws that were put in place, very clearly worded. Look at the EPA, its charter was completely clear under Biden. And the courts aren't doing anything to uphold duly passed legislation. We have a complete imbalance where two of the three co-equal branches of government are not doing their job. oddly, the answer to this question is starting with comprehensive court reform. Because we can't have a situation where Congress continues to do the right things, the executive branch fully ignores them, and the courts are powerless to take any action against them.
Thank you so much. So we're gonna keep changing the order around a little bit, and this question, we will start with Beth Davidson. And then come on my way. So question number 2, labor related. Powerful special interests are pushing hard for vouchers and other schemes that would divert billions from public schools to private institutions or religious institutions. Mike Lawler is on the record saying he supports tax breaks for parents who send their children to private schools. He wants to allow them to deduct tuition costs from their taxes. Our public schools are the hearts of our community. For residents of your district, we know how our property values are closely correlated with how excellent our public schools are. Will you protect our public schools and oppose vouchers and any other proposal that will allow taxpayer dollars to be used for private and religious schools?
So as I said, I'm the daughter of a proud hard-carrying union teacher and the mom of 2 kids in public school, one of whom's graduating this week. Look, following Donald Trump's election, and let's not forget Betsy DeVos, charter school tycoon, installation as Secretary of Education, I decided to step up and run for the school board, where I won and served for 2 terms. As Vice President of the school board, I spearheaded Rockland County's first racial equity policy, designed to close opportunity gaps in terms of AP enrollments, special education referrals, and student disciplinary actions. I also served several terms as NIAC's representative on the Rockland County School Boards Association, where as chair of the legislative committee, I helped push forward policies and advocate for free school breakfast and lunch for every public school student, which we now finally saw passed into this last budget. Very exciting. My education philosophy on this is very simple. Public dollars, public schools, full stop.
I think we all know that a good public education available to all children is an investment in the future of our nation. Fundamentally, I say this as a person who went to public schools my whole life, public universities, with the exception of one. That's where I got all the student loans from. So for this reason, I oppose vouchers or any that diverts taxpayer dollars dedicated to public schools. Completely and fully, full stop. Taxpayer dollars dedicated for public schools must go to public schools. In California, some of you might know Prop 13, that was catastrophic. It completely gutted the public school system. When you've got the public school system, you've got the future of our nation. And so I will reiterate, no vouchers, no to charter schools, public dollars for public education.
Public education is the backbone of democracy. For the last 10 years, I have worked in every single under-resourced school district in Westchester County. I have seen the impact of education on students. I have seen the impact of education on families. At 914 Cares, we created a program that brought books into the homes of under-resourced school children. It is imperative that students learn to read before the age of before 3rd grade, where they are 20% less likely to graduate from high school. We made sure that every student in Westchester County had their own personal library so that they would be able to read by 3rd grade. I oppose all tax dollars going anywhere but to public education. I oppose vouchers, and as the product of public school education, I went to SUNY Binghamton as well. I think that all public funding, state, federal, and local, should go to increase our public schools. When students go to public school, they get to live the American dream. I got to live the American dream, and it's imperative that our under-resourced communities and the families living there continue to get to live the American dream.
One son over there at Carrie Tompkins Elementary School, just wrapping up 3rd grade, another son somewhere that way at DVC middle school, wrapping up 6th grade. So I talked about how it's important to know how we got to this point in order to how to get us to public school. This is not just a Trump issue, 1.0 or 2.0, but a long-term movement to debilitate, defund public schools, so to create alternate realities, alternate histories, alternate civics, to fracture our country. And we're seeing it come to a position, to come to a point right now. So, the Supreme Court let public-private money go to, or public money go to private schools. I cited a case, but I think from about 20 years ago. John Roberts, who's Justice Dangerous, Donald Trump, has led a movement in the past decade, maybe decade, to make sure that our public monies have to go to religious schools if they also go to secular private schools. And did you hear the one about Oklahoma trying to get public money to pay for a sectarian Catholic charter school that came one vote away from being constitutionally mandated by the Supreme Court, but for one justice, Amy Coney Barrett, refusing herself? That's coming back. How are we going to get out of this moment? We know how we got here. Peterson, court reform. Because it's a constitutional issue now. We can't legislate our way out of it. How are we going to get there? See where we came, where we got to this point. How do we get it? Understanding it ends in the courts. We need to make sure that the courts reflect the public will. Don't make stuff up and create new constitutional rules that shouldn't exist to protect the vote.
So the question was, will you protect our public schools and oppose vouchers and or other proposals that allow taxpayer dollars to be used for private and religious schools? Ready for this? Yes.
I don't think there's any daylight between any of us on this issue. Public schools ensure excellence throughout America and for the entire country. In fact, educational opportunities are clearly the best path forward for the future success of all Americans. That's something that Donald Trump and Mike Lawler apparently do not want. The Department of Education should be headed by somebody who actually values education. I, of course, oppose vouchers for private and religious schools. Taxpayers should not be subsidizing specialty education for the wealthy or for religious instruction. I would also go one step further, and I would like to see an expansion of pre-K programs throughout the country. I think that's great for our economy.
So I'm a proud product of New York State Hudson Valley Public Schools. So despite neither of my parents graduating college, New York State Public Schools prepared me and enabled me to get into West Point, Harvard, and MIT, and work at the White House. Public schools work when we fund them and resource them adequately. And I think one of the frustrating things I've seen over the years is I have tremendous faith and confidence in these, but I don't think we've been providing them the resources necessary to enable the next generation of Americans to have the economic prospects they deserve and we need to drive American prosperity. I literally remember less than 2 years ago, preparing to go to a meeting in the White House Situation Room about election security and Russian cyber criminals looking to potentially try to interfere with our 2024 election. And I get a bulletin email from the New York chapter of ACLU talking about how over 10,000 students in Rockland County have lead in their drinking water in their school tunnels. We should not be tolerating this. This is unacceptable. So no, I'm not supporting the taking of public funds to go anywhere else. We need to be investing in all of our schools. And we haven't done it to the level our children deserve for a quality and safe education. So shame on us, and it's time to step up. And Congress absolutely should be helping with that.
Okay. Question number 3 on our side. Next to housing, childcare costs are the biggest burden to young families and workers in the region. The average cost of care in a center in Westchester County is nearly $2,500 per month for one infant. What can the federal government do to reduce the cost of childcare for working families? And I think we're starting with Evan.
Thank you.
my goodness, there are so many things that can happen on this level that need to happen. I'm gonna say first, which is maybe slightly odd, is that there needs to be fair paternal leave, both for fathers, for mothers, for all parents need to have equal leave when their children are born, and for an extended period of time. We know that at least 1 year is beneficial for children's development. I know every other country in the world is, better at that than us. So that's the critical first step. That needs to be mandated. And we need to have subsidies and tax breaks for childcare. It is absolutely essential. It's bad enough that we have to go back to work when our children are only 3 months old. I did that in both cases with my children. But then to have almost my entire paycheck disappear to pay for the childcare on top of that, like we had to have 2 incomes to be able to afford it. So we need good subsidies to advance this.
Over the last 10 years, I've been in almost every childcare center in Westchester County. We have provided diapers and hygiene products and period products to the families of the children in those in those daycare centers. Those daycare centers survive on child tax care credits and on grants from the federal government. We need to continue to increase those tax credits and increase grants from the federal government for those child care agencies. Similarly, we need to increase the parental leave. Sorry, I was in HR, so I call it FMLA, but I'm told that not everybody knows what that means. We need to increase parental leave to be at least a year. When you give a family the opportunity to spend the first year of life with their child, it stops any sort of emotional detachment. It stops a lot of issues with their mental health. And also, it stops them having to pay for childcare, which then allows them to save to be able to pay for childcare when they go back to work.
There's a policy floating around called paid leave for all, fully supported. It is exactly what it sounds like. And Mike Lawler, if you're watching, he's gonna say this is called tax and spend liberal stuff. Because that's a shorthand way to get people frothing and not realize that what we want is popular. People want it of all classes, stripes, politics, except for the people who would profit all our time. Big secret is that big, bold, transformative laws are popular when they're put into place. They're repealed at their opposition's political peril. The entire New Deal, the Great Society, Medicaid, Medicare, Fair Housing Act, Civil Rights and Voting Rights Act. Republicans can't repeal them, so they say, tax and spend liberal. And all sorts of scary sounding stuff that worked in the Reagan era, but if we stand up and actually make the case for it, it won't work. So we need to stand up and make the case for these types of bold, progressive, yes, popular policies that we can afford because we are the richest nation on earth, and not stand back and stand by, letting those who have interest against are getting what's popular ever passed. And then not let them rely on courts to strike it down.
May need to reclaim some of my time with that yes answer. So I come at this from a unique perspective when my husband and I adopted our son. He was a newborn, and at 6 weeks old, we took him back to where we were living, which was Israel. And in Israel, they have a great leave policy. It's almost up to 2 years, depending upon how you combine your leave. And so guess what they don't have a lot of? Daycares. So we had to scramble and figure out how we were going to get care for our son. We ended up getting a great nanny and it worked out, but it was expensive. And then we get back to America and I'm trying to get him into daycares, which apparently you have to do before they're even in utero. And it turns out that $2,500 or so is the going rate for someone who's practically potty trained and can feed himself. It goes up from there, the more care they need. And so something that we did that I didn't recognize right away, but once we realized it existed, is the flexible spending accounts for dependent care. And that gives about $5,000 a year pre-tax money out of your paycheck that you can use for childcare. And at $2,500 a month, at $5,000 a year, you get 2 months, so it's really not that great of a deal. But it does bring down your taxable income. But what was interesting was under the COVID period, it actually went up to $10,000. And then the following year, when I went to claim all the credits I saved every receipt, it was suddenly back to $5,000. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm not understanding how this works. That is a very simple fix. It doesn't do anything other than bring down people's taxable income. May hurt the economy, I guess, in some ways, if all we care about are billionaires, but it does give the opportunity for people to save a little bit more and at least have that money be pre-tax for childcare. So I think that's a very simple solution that Congress should be acting on right now. I'm sorry I didn't take that.
Flex spending does work, great program, I agree. The Republican preferred approach is tax credits for childcare. Tax credits for kids do not work at all. They favor the wealthy, not the less wealthy. They still require families to lay out money for a full year and then just hope and pray they get a refund on their tax return. It's not a long-term solution to a real problem. We should make universal preschool a federal program. We should provide livable wages to child care providers that would increase the supply of qualified help for families, allow people to return to work. We should restore funding to Head Start, something Trump and Mike Lawler have decimated. And this just comes from my knowledge of how you actually implement legislation. We should make sure that all child care benefits are indexed to inflation. There's no reason we should revisit this year after year at the whim of an administration. We can win Republican support here on Professor by tying it to the economic expansion, and it will certainly change.
It is completely wrong and unfair, the amount of financial burden that childcare puts on working class families. It's wrong and we must do better. The average cost of childcare in Rockland County for a single child every year is $10,000 and $15,000 here in Westchester. It is literally more expensive to pay for childcare than to send your kids for in-state tuition to SUNY Binghamton. It should not be more expensive to send your kid to childcare than to college. And that's the reality working families are facing right now. There are things Congress should and must do, and that's what we're talking about here. What are the policies that Congress should be pursuing to, again, make America work for working Americans? And that's things like, yes, making the child tax credit expansion permanent. That's things like increasing funding for the child care and development block grants. Yes, Head Start. These are all things that are essential to investing in our children and their future. Because let's be real, you don't start development when you go to school. So going back to pre-K and the importance of expanding that, it is an investment that starts at birth. So let's be smarter and better.
So this is one of those really important issues where representation matters. We need more parents of school-age kids serving in Congress. Data tells us that 85% of American women are moms by the time they turn 45, but less than 10% of members of Congress have school-age children. I know, as a working mom, I know firsthand the exorbitant cost of childcare. It is outrageous, and it's causing a brain drain because not everyone does choose to both work to pay for the exorbitant cost of childcare. That's a loss to our economy. That's a loss to our workforce. And that hurts our country down the road. It's ridiculous that the richest country in the world does not offer universal childcare. Gutting the Department of Education is not taking us in the right direction. We need Congress to take back the power of the purse and start reinvesting in these programs. Universal pre-K, universal 3K, and truly universal, not the sporadic lottery system it is now. That's what we need to truly move our country forward.
Third question on labor side, we will start with Jessica Brown. This August, we will celebrate the 90th anniversary of the Social Security Act, representing the best of what we have ever done for the American people. Social Security established the first federal social safety net. It is a symbol of the federal government's responsibility to take care of our elderly by ensuring a floor of economic security. The Trump administration's closing of the Social Security hearing office in White Plains, the only hearing office between the Bronx and Albany, is just the latest attack on Social Security by Republicans. Can we count on you to oppose efforts to reduce the Social Security benefits, oppose efforts to privatize Social Security, oppose efforts to raise the retirement age, and push instead for increasing the taxable income limit as a source of revenue?
Yes, yes, and yes, but no. Social Security is an earned benefit. It is not anything that people are getting as anything other than something they paid into it. 40% of Americans over the age of 65 rely on Social Security as their only form of income. So if they lose their Social Security benefits, it is life and death for them. We need to increase the Social Security tax gap. There's a bill in Congress right now that calls for a $400,000 FICA increase. So if you make more than $400,000, you get taxed for every dollar over that. I 100% support that. At 914 Cares, a significant number of our volunteers are living solely on their Social Security paycheck. And I asked one of them to give me her breakdown, so just bear with me while I read it to you. So she has a monthly benefit of $31,025. $3,100, sorry, thank you, $3,125. Medicare Parts B and C takes $185 a month. Her drug plan Part D takes $66 a month. So she is living, after working for over 40 years, on $2,874 a month. And Mike Lawler and Donald Trump want to take that away from her. That is not okay.
Yes to all the questions. When Republicans hold power, they hurt people, tank the economy, and then mess with our voting so that they can preserve their power because what they do is unpopular and people don't like it. Point in case, Social Security stuff. Since the New Deal, they've been fighting to make sure Social Security loses its solvency, less powerful. See it now, budget bill. What do? Well, we do things that help people and make the economy better, like getting rid of tariffs, making sure that we don't have the false choice of saying, oh, well, we need to raise the Social Security age, and we need to cut benefits because it's not going to be solved because we don't have enough revenue coming in. Why isn't there enough revenue coming in? Yes, exactly. They present a false choice and then try to hurt people. Then they tank the economy, then they mess with other elections to keep themselves in power. We need to break that cycle. I know I keep going back to the structural stuff. I sound angry because I am, but I promise you, once in Congress, when we have control of Congress, people pushing this, making sure that we're looking to help people, pushing forward an alternative, revealing these false choices. We can start our way toward the positive cycle to end this vicious cycle and get us back on track. We don't have to mess with the popular stuff that helps.
So again, this is one of those ditto moments where I agree with everything that's said before. I think though what's really important to think about was sort of when Social Security came into my consciousness, I was probably smaller than this table is tall. Because my grandmother and my grandfather, the first John Sullivan, who I'm named after, passed away when he was really young after serving in World War II and was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis, which is a form of muscular dystrophy. My grandmother relied on Social Security every single month to feed my dad and my aunts. It was her reason why she was a Democrat and loved FDR so much. And so I understand what it means because I've heard the stories, I've witnessed it in my own family as a lifeline. So we cannot do anything to limit the benefits or in any way harm Social Security because for all the points mentioned here, The Republicans and Mike Lawler under their watch, we're seeing things like the White Plains office close. This is making it harder for seniors to get access to their benefits. And if you look at Medicaid, Social Security, and Medicare as well, they're making it more difficult to have to reapply for your benefits every so many months versus every year. So you get lost in the bureaucracy and the paperwork. We have to stand up to that, we have to call it out, but we also have to let people know that as Democrats, we stand for Social Security and we'll do everything possible to protect it.
I am one of those Democrats who believes in Social Security and doing everything possible to protect it. I would oppose privatizing Social Security, reducing any of the benefits. I'm actually just looking at my notes and it's basic math here. The same Trump-Lawler administration that believes the Department of Education should be controlled by someone who doesn't understand education also doesn't seem to understand the basic math. Only 6% of American workers today earn more than the $176,000 cap used to compute Social Security payments. That 6% is expected to grow to 20% of all workers. If you don't do anything here, you're having 14% more of the workforce exceeding that cap and not paying into Social Security. It's not sustainable. It needs to be addressed. It creates an untapped market to secure what is a vital social safety net. It's creating it's an inequitable program that we need to address, and it's a pretty simple.
Growing up with a working class family, when you're hearing these stats, some of them are my family members, right? Who worked their whole lives, paid into the system, and are now relying on us in their final years to help them get by. And they deserve that. They've earned that. Our seniors deserve stability and dignity. And the fact that there is anything else like that coming out of Washington, D.C. is unacceptable. I have fought to make sure that Americans have freedom, equality, and dignity in their lives and a better future. And the fact that we see folks like Lawler looking to cut programs, like here in this district, support over 130,000 people, right, between Social Security benefits, survivors benefits, and disability benefits, is unacceptable. Where's this camera? Why are you such a terrible human? But this isn't funny though, right? Because it is people's lives. And you deserve better. We deserve better. So here's to kicking this guy out and getting someone who is an actual leader of character, who's going to fight for the real things, who's going to do what matters to this country, and not apologize for it, and not take it back.
Social Security is one of the most successful anti-poverty programs in American history. And yet, our Congressman Mike Lawler said on national television, Morning Joe, that along with Medicaid and Medicare to pay for tax cuts for billionaires, Social Security was also on the chopping block. Let's be real, for this administration, the cruelty is the point, with incompetence being an unfortunate byproduct. Such a perfect example of Mike Lawler's equal parts of duplicitousness and fecklessness. When we found out the Social Security office was closing, he tried to blame the Biden administration, right? It was his fault. Whoops. 10 minutes later, out comes the Doge list of cuts for the week, and there's our Social Security office in White Plains right at the top. Outrageous, unacceptable, and my constituents are feeling it in real time. I have a constituent whose Social Security benefits and housing allowance are at odds. She went to our White Plains office, to our West Nyack Social Security office, and someone said, oh, now you have to go to White Plains. She started to get on a 2-hour bus, an 80-year-old woman, to go fight for those benefits. I had to tell her that office was closed. It's wrong. We need to reopen that office and put someone back in charge who actually cares about this successful program. Thank you.
I would say my mother is 87 years old. She lives in low-income senior housing, and her income is made up of a combination of Social Security, my father's pension, my late father's pension, and support from Medicaid and that sort of thing. She lives on very little every month, and she balances her budget very perfectly. But I would say this: the Social Security itself is not enough. It's just not enough. You need to have access to affordable housing. You need to have Medicaid. You need to have all these things So my mom, I'm watching her really balance everything to make ends meet. So of course we have to protect Social Security. Of course we need to raise the tax cap, as you say. And I know the Congressional Budget Office actually put forward 2 options, one of which would extend Social Security, I think, another 10 years until 2035, another till 2051, I believe. Both solid plans. One of them needs to happen, certainly the one that makes it last longer, but it cannot be outside of other benefits that seniors and people with disabilities and limited income pregnant women need. No, we really have to fight for this.
Okay, I think we're on to youth question number 4. Despite the Affordable Care Act's success in expanding healthcare access, the escalating cost of coverage and the inherent inequities of the US healthcare system remain critical issues we can't ignore. Further action, especially expanding access, is essential. While Mike Lawler votes for a budget bill that will cut tens of thousands of his constituents off Medicaid, we want to know where you stand. According to a Harvard Youth poll in 2024, 2/3 of all 18 to 29-year-olds and 85% of those Democrats say that basic health insurance is a right for all people, and if someone has no means of paying for it, the government should provide it. Would you support legislation to move the nation towards universal health care coverage?
Of course.
We'll start with Mike.
Of course, it's a no-brainer. You know, there's various ways to get there, but no one should choose between their heating bill and their health care. No one. Full stop. Now, again, I can go into my whole talk about the structural issues of our country and the billionaire bus system that's designed to block all of this. Because query whether if we pass any of these things, whether it's an expanded public option that got filibustered out, or to meet the filibuster for the ACA, whether it's for Medicare for all, whether it's for any kind of universal option, even if you get the vote, if you get the House, you get the Senate, and you get the filibuster, you get the White House, still got Supreme Court that's lying in wait to strike it all down unconstitutional. So, yes, we need to ensure that we have universal health care in some form in this country so that no one has to choose between their heating bills and their health care. And yes, we need to make sure that we have a structural address in this Congress, that we use the House to educate and to champion not just legislation, but how we can actually get it done. Because it's popular, it's only repealed at the political peril of those who oppose it. Get it done. Stop at nothing to make sure it stays.
Healthcare is a human right, full stop. And the idea that we have a member of Congress who wants to do everything possible to slash and burn Medicaid and hurt our seniors and those who need that benefit to survive and get quality healthcare is appalling. We need to ensure that the subsidies that are attached to the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, I think you should get credit for it, are there and are making Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, more affordable. Interesting fact, when you resign your position at the FBI because you know you're going to be held to something that you morally and legally won't do, you lose your health care. So there was a period of time there where I was searching online in the Affordable Care Act to understand how much it would be to get coverage for a family of 3 for a quality health care plan that is not catastrophic coverage, over $2,000 a month on this much income. It's absolutely absurd. So we need to bolster the system we have. We have to make sure that we are not throwing more people off of their health care. And we need to make sure Mike Lawler is not in Congress because his most recent vote for that tax bill raises the cost of Hudson Valley families' insurance by over 30%. So this is serious, it's personal to me, and it's absolutely inexcusable that this is where our Congress people are and where our government is, and we have to fight back because it is our right.
Completely agree. Very well said. I think this is an example where Obamacare got it exactly right. Greater participation in our healthcare system reduces prices for everybody in the system. Right now, if you're uninsured, you're going to an emergency room, you're getting care because emergency rooms treat everybody. It's the most expensive care you could possibly get. and we all pay for that. I would immediately in Congress build a coalition to ensure healthcare is provided to all. There should be wide support for this. You can easily demonstrate that the uninsured cost this country in lost productivity in emergency room visits, loss of productivity, loss of tax base, healthcare, preventative care, mental health care would benefit the entire country, and it's ridiculous America.
The current healthcare system and the price, the cost of what it takes to lead healthy lives or to deal with an illness or an accident is not something that is sustainable. You talk to so many families and they live in fear of being one accident or diagnosis away from going bankrupt. And how is that something we are accepting in America? It shouldn't be. Healthcare should not be a privilege, it should be a right. I'll tell you, I don't think government belongs in dictating healthcare decisions to include if someone wants to have a private insurance plan, letting them have the flexibility to choose it. But what we've seen with Mike Lawler and this Republican administration is consistent government overreach. Mike Lawler has voted against a woman having the right to abortion care 12 times, to include prohibiting women in military uniform using TRICARE to access abortion care services. This dude has no right representing our community. He has no right representing our families. He's not fighting for them. He's fighting for himself at the expense of us. We saw that in one big, beautiful bill where they're talking about cutting $55 billion in federal funding to New York State. That includes not just Medicaid, Medicare plans, but also support to healthcare facilities and their staffs. That's up to 84,000 jobs in the city of New York. This isn't what leaders do. We deserve better.
Thank you for the question, and this is so personal to me. For those of us who are my age, before there or older, before there was the Affordable Care Act, you may remember women in the audience, we didn't get annual, preventive medicine. You just got your well woman check. So when I was about 8 months after I was married, I was diagnosed with cancer, thyroid cancer, that by the time I had my surgery and treatment, they estimated it had been growing in my body for at least 4 or 5 years, which made it such a more difficult recovery. Then a couple of years later, when we tried to start our family, IVF was not covered by our insurance, and we had to pay for it out of pocket. I know what it's like to feel like fighting with your insurance companies is a second job. We have to stop the price gouging, the jacking up of rates by insurance companies, only to see benefits go down. And we have to fight for, it's time for a public option. Let's just say that, and we're aiming for it and work for it. I'm so lucky to have my CSCA healthcare as a Rockland County legislator, because if they overturn the Affordable Care Act, I won't be able to get health insurance on the open market. This is wrong, and we need to fight to change it once and for all.
To have the same CSCA health insurance, and I'm deeply grateful for it because my employer, the insurance was so expensive to get it for my family that it would have taken up about 2/3 of my monthly paycheck, right? And so being able to get that plan really saved my family because I wouldn't have been able to cover my husband and my 2 children. So and I'm gonna say this, there was a time when I lived in the UK, and I have actually experienced what it is like to have universal access to healthcare at no cost, and the weight that it lifts off you in terms of your children always being able to be taken care of, being able to focus on different things. Our system is completely unsustainable, whether your insurance is covered by your employer or whether it is covered by Medicaid that may be taken away thanks to the cruelty of Mike Lawler. I agree that healthcare is a universal right, and we need a government that is actually morally accountable to us, that fully understands the moral line of what it means to allow people to die in certain circumstances. I don't even get me started on justice.
I'd like to reiterate what John said, which is healthcare is a basic human right. At 914 Cares, we have seen that when families don't have health coverage, the parents get sick and they can't work, and the children get sick and they face chronic absenteeism. Healthcare is a basic human right that the Trump-Lawler administration has decimated with this budget. They have decimated Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security and veteran services. They've decimated SNAP benefits. You think SNAP and you think food, but when children don't have enough food to eat, that creates medical problems. We need to bring back the full extent of the Affordable Care Act. We need to bring down the cost of prescription drugs. No family should ever have to choose between giving their child insulin and putting food on the table. We need to bring back mental health into our school districts. The Trump-Lawler administration recently cut all mental health to school districts. This is absolutely unacceptable. And we need to make sure that insurance companies provide not just healthcare, but eye care and dental care, prescription care, and all care for the whole body. It is our responsibility, our government's responsibility, to take care of the people who live here.
Okay, we're gonna do one more super quick yes or no down the line. I don't really need to do much to tee it up because we all know the importance of this issue once I say it. Do you believe in a woman's right to choose? Do you believe in a woman's right to choose? In abortion, healthcare, yeah. That, I guess go start down, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Abortion is healthcare. Yes.
I don't know why this one only gets one word. I'm sorry, it's the hugest issue to so many people in this country. I'll just say yes, and the fact that Mike Lawler was able to skate on this issue saying he supported a New York State law, it's being settled law, is outrageous. He has the most out-of-step, radically anti-choice record that we've ever seen in this district.
Hell yes.
It's a medical decision that should be left solely to the woman. Federal government has absolutely no role.
Thank you so much. So the library closes at 9 o'clock, and these are workers here too, so we don't want to make them stay longer than they have to. That's why we shifted gears a little bit. We are now on to closing statements. We will begin with John. John, you will have 90 seconds. I hope each candidate also adds to their remarks how they will address viability. What is your path to victory, given that he has such a head start and such greater name recognition in the district? John, you're first.
Well, thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you to the staff who are staying in a little bit later to help clean up after tonight's event. And I want to thank all of my fellow candidates for being here. It's an abundance of riches, really, to have people sitting up here talking with you about the issues we all care about, and it not being Mike Lawler for once. I also want to thank our moderators, because it means a lot to take the time. And as I mentioned, I know that everyone has day jobs and then second jobs. When it comes down to it, I think that right now we understand what is at stake. It's seniors who are seeing their retirement savings dwindle. It's everything from healthcare that we've talked about tonight. But I'm in this race because I really truly believe that America's best days are ahead of it. I think this democracy is stronger than any one party or one president. And I really think that while Mike and Donald Trump have a lot of power, they don't have nearly as much power as we do, because the real power is in rooms like this. It's communities coming together to talk about the issues and standing up and saying enough. You know, I was in the FBI, as I mentioned. You don't have to be in the FBI to protect the country. You just have to be willing to stand up and fight for it. And so I'm in that fight, and I hope you'll join me. And as it goes to the idea of viability, I think we have to be out there. Doing these events this early is fantastic. I have talked about in the previous forum, working with my fellow Democrats up here on the stage to make sure that we're door knocking and getting out there early to let people know the Democrats are here. We didn't disappear. And it's making sure that we're going to every corner of this district and everywhere in between, sharing our message and our background. And that's what I'm doing. The results and the feedback has been amazing. And so I'm going to keep doing that. We've got a year from today, I think, until primary day. And so we'll be doing that for the next year. So thank you.
The reverse order of viability, and Lawler's head start. So his name recognition is a liability this time because he is tied to the mast of a regime that he's supporting. He can't pretend to be a moderate up here and play MAGA, or he can be MAGA down there. He can't. He's exposed. So his name recognition is a liability. Where does he get his money from? Right? It's money from plutocrats, and autocrats, and theocrats. So we're watching you, Lawler. We see you, and you cannot play us anymore. Right? He thinks, and people watching, he thinks you're stupid. We need to make that message loud and clear. Now, I'm running to build a new house. What does that mean? Well, right now, we have a would-be autocrat in the White House, and a majority of, how can I put it, political operatives, unelected political operatives in the Supreme Court, all installed by the same people, and they're jockeying for power to disempower and hurt working people. And the Congress does nothing about it. When they do with the finger, they steal from the vulnerable to give tax cuts to those who don't need them. And when they applaud, it's to cheer on Trump's violating due process and free speech, fundamental rights we fought a revolution over. And they cheer on the Supreme Court as tearing away reproductive freedom from moving across this country, ripping away voting rights, and yes, hurting workers. So we don't get out of this moment by saying the same things to the same kinds of people. I'm clear-eyed about the structural issues our government faces. We lose when we just come out here promising nice things and fold the moment that the billionaire-backed system designed to block us does just that. As we lose voters, that's how we lose elections. We need to stop at nothing to show the American public and this district that we work for them. That's what this campaign's about. That's why I'm here. I read construction papers, so I apologize. But thank you all for your attention. Look forward to your time.
When I see a problem, I fix it. 10 years ago, I saw families walking to the bus stop without coats, and I created a nonprofit that helped solve those problems. I am a collaborator. I am a problem solver. I am somebody who has been in every single community in Westchester County. How do people know me? You say 914 cares in any community in Westchester County, and people say, thank you. Thank you for helping our working families. Thank you for working on solutions to our problems. Thank you for understanding our needs. I solve problems. Right now, the biggest problem facing New York 17 is Mike Lawler and his ridiculous policies that hurt our working families. I see a problem and I'm going to fix it. I'm going to help get Mike Lawler out of Congress so that we can bring dignity and respect back to the United States government and back to Congress. When the founders of our Constitution created the Constitution, they created 3 separate but equal branches of government. But you know what the first branch of government is? Do you know what the first article of our Constitution is? Congress. Do you know who the most important, the most powerful person in Congress is? Mike Johnson. What do we need to do? We need to get rid of Mike Johnson, who is the sole person allowing Trump's policies to continue to hurt our working families. How do we get rid of Mike Johnson? Tell me. We flip the House blue, and that runs straight to New York.
I'm going to say something that's a little bit controversial, but I think we all know that Mike Lawler is a massive problem. How did Mike Lawler win? How did Mike Lawler win in a district where Harris won? Democrats have to do a better job of listening and understanding what the needs are. That is more, respectfully, than observing people's needs. It is actually empowering people to speak up about their needs, share their needs, and respond with appropriate policies. I met the mayor of Buchanan. She's a Democrat. I was talking to her about the campaign and she said, I'm sorry, but I endorse Mike Lawler. And the reason why is because when Indian Point shut down, he was there. Where were we? We have to be better than he is at his job. We need to be present everywhere listening, caring, paying attention, and then delivering. I have spent 30 years of my life in the service industry delivering for people. It's why I got in this race. And to speak about viability, we must build coalitions of people who have been historically disenfranchised by our own party, because they are the ones who voted for Mike Lawler. And that starts by being in communities, by paying attention to people who are Democrats but do not vote. Why? It's not for us to tell them, vote for me because I'm a Democrat and I'm better for you. It's for us to learn from them, adapt, and deliver. That is why I'm running.
Thank you. First and foremost, a huge thank you to Harry Bicker, to Legislator Ulai, to our intrepid chair, Suzanne Berger, and to the workers of this library here. We do want to be respectful of their paid time. This has been an important discussion. Less than a week after the 2024 election, my phone started to ring with people from across this district asking me to consider running. Democratic Party leaders, fellow elected officials, labor leaders, friends, and neighbors all said they wanted to see a candidate who knew how to campaign and could not only deliver Westchester, but bring Rockland back under the Democratic tent as well. As a Rockland County legislator, a longtime Clarkstown Democratic Committee member, and a resident of this community for 20 years, I bring the experience of already knowing how to run and win in the Hudson Valley. I've not only won my own campaigns, you see I have this many endorsements because I've knocked the doors up and down the ticket, ultimately helping to deliver the first Democratic supermajority in Rockland County, a county that Donald Trump won in 2024. I know what it's gonna take to go up against Mike Lawler in his own backyard. I've known him a long time. I'm the only Democrat in this race who's beaten Republicans in tough districts, built real grassroots coalition, and delivered results in divided governments. That's what it's gonna take to win this district. That's what it's gonna take to flip the House of Representatives. That's what it's gonna take to take back our democracy and ensure that Mike Lawler, who doesn't represent our values, no longer represents us in Congress. Thank you very much.
So the most important question here tonight is how do we win? Because everything we've said doesn't matter if we don't win. You don't govern if you don't win. And the reality is here in New York 17, that when you look at the numbers, you've got to have a Democrat that can also win non-Democrats over. Ladies and gentlemen, it's just math. 27% of registered voters are unaffiliated here in New York 17. That's what's going to determine which way this election goes. And while Mike Lawler is a terrible human, he is an effective politician. And so we've got to crush him. And I will tell you, I've spent my entire life, whether I realize it or not, training for this fight. This was not my plan for 2025, but you know what? It is absolutely my mission. Between going to West Point and learning how to be a leader of character, between going to Harvard and earning my Master in Public Policy, MIT, earning my MBA, and then having the absolute privilege of leading America's sons and daughters into combat. 16 years in uniform, 2 years at the White House, a year and a half as an executive overseeing our nation's critical infrastructure security and working with state and local government officials and the private sector all over this country, on both sides of the aisle. I understand what it takes to lead this nation to do better. And I am doing this because I believe in this nation. And we can be better. And as you saw the events over this weekend, we cannot afford to have the wrong person in this seat because the stakes are too high and the challenges that we are facing as a nation are too important. And failure is not an option. So yeah, I've been training for this fight my whole life, even if I didn't know it was coming. So Mikey, I hope you're ready.
First of all, thank all of you for coming and participating. It's vital that people get involved, and we all appreciate it. Thank you for being here. I believe that we all deserve a far better American government than the one we have today. Frankly, our federal government is a complete mess. Trump and Lawler have policies filled with hatred. They are purposely divisive. They trample our constitutional rights. Job number one, obviously, with Congress. I have 40 years of executive experience. I have actual legislative experience. I've worked to build coalitions. I've served with people of all political parties, and I've got them to understand the right thing to do. I've been elected 5 times. I've challenged Donald Trump and I've won. I can win this race. I can hit the ground running. Let's do this together. I have 1 year. I hope I can convince you to give me your support. Thank you again for showing.
We are just about at, actually a little bit over time, but I want to thank the candidates once again for doing this. To everybody who came out, to Emiliana for her work on this, Brian running the Zoom. Tonight, whether you are here as a voter or you are here working for your candidate and doing your job. Westchester Young Dems is the youth arm of the Democratic Party. We work to get Democrats elected. We work to get young people involved in the process. We fight for issues and we build leaders. If you are interested in keeping up with what we do or coming to events if you're a Young Dem, WestchesterYoungDemocrats.org. If you go to the contact form and just fill that out, that's what gets you on our email list. And look forward to seeing you soon.
And we are tasked with putting away all the chairs, so if we have some people who can help with that.